Good morning, guys, and welcome back to Paint with Sal. Today we're painting a lake. It's kind of a wintry lake landscape. We have a solitary tree in here with no leaves on it, showing that it's winter, a little bit of snow, but not too much. But the best part about this painting is the reflection on the lake. That's what's gonna really make this thing pop. So get your brush, get your coffee, and let's get painting. Take a look at the palette. Really quick, my colors are titanium white, cadmium red, process yellow, cadmium yellow, teal, ultramarine blue, and raw umber. And I have already taken the raw umber and the ultramarine blue and mixed a near black. That's how I like to get my darkest darks. And as you can see on the screen here, I have already quickly mapped out what we're painting today. So these on the bottom half, this is reflection. All right, so let's just begin with the block-in. So we like to go from the back forward, so let's get to the sky first. The sky is mostly white, there's just a little bit of blue in there. It's kind of an overcast day. But like you see, the ground of my painting is kind of like pink. So even the white we're gonna have to put in here. So let's mix a sky blue, but it's mostly going to be white. There's not a ton of blue in this. So we'll take the white, put some of the white over here, and maybe put just a dab of blue in there. Not too much. Maybe a dab of teal. Since this is just crudely and quickly drawn on, it's okay if you go over some of the lines. We're going to do this in layers, so once we get to the mountains, then we can bring them up past the sky if you want. But what you don't want to do is not go far enough. You can overlap the mountain, but don't let the mountain overlap your sky. And like I always say, this is just a block-in, so of course you can still see some of the canvas through this first layer. That's okay, because it's the first layer. Second layer will get us almost pure total coverage. And as you get over to the right here, you can put a little more color in here. It seems that the clouds are covering this whole side, but then there's a little bit of sky peeking through on the right. So add a little bit of your blue in there, a little bit of your teal. And let's put a little more blue into the sky over here. I think I'll add even more than that right over here. It's kind of like the clouds seem to end around here, and this is just kind of a line where it gets more blue. Right over here. Okay, and since we have these colors already, let's bring them down into the reflection where it's mostly going to be these colors as well. So take this blue that we're using now and put it on this side, just like it is above. It's kind of a mirror image. It's going to be a little darker down here, but let's just map it out first before we get the perfect colors. I did just darken it up slightly by adding just a little bit of ultramarine blue in there on this side. And like I said, there's kind of a line here, so make sure you do almost the same thing down here. Okay. Okay, while I finish up some of this block in, I'm going to play a little bit of music and just speed it up slightly just so I can get past all the easy stuff that you don't need to listen to me for. So let's play a little music for a second, get some of this block in done. Okay, I just wanted to get a little block in there before I continued talking, but let's finish the block in together. Let me know if you like learning about how to do the block in, or if I should just do the whole block in and then we do the rest of the painting when it comes to the details together. Or if you prefer to see all of it step by step like this, which makes for a lot longer videos, but let me know in the comments what you prefer, and then I'll try to do it that way. Alright, let's take a look at the palette. Looks like we're getting to this grass here, and in this reference photo the grass is kind of yellowy, kind of a little orange. So obviously let's take some yellow, some umber to darken it up, and some red to orange it up. And a little more yellow. Alright. And that's a pretty good start. Alright, so come to the left bank here. And yeah, that should work to start. And just start covering it. So you don't have to cover up the whole thing like I'm doing now. You could pick this color for where this color exactly is, and then you get another color and you fix those areas. But I like to just cover it all in this, and then we'll add a layer for the other colors and things that are in here. Alright, sorry guys, I had to turn on a new fan because it's so hot in here, so hopefully you can still hear me and it doesn't sound that bad. Okay, let's continue with the blocking. Remember to spray down your palette so that things don't dry. You can get this in my links below in the description. You can get it off Amazon. It's a fine mister. Specifically, you need fine mist. If you're going to mist down your palette, you don't want a bunch of water droplets. It needs to be very fine. So yeah, links to all my art gear down below for Amazon if you want to check it out. Now, let's continue with this blocking. So we're taking this kind of yellowy orange and getting all the the little grassy areas here. Very quickly for the block-in is totally fine. Doesn't have to be good looking for the block-in. Okay, that's pretty good. Now let's get this top mountain here, which gets a lot darker and a bit blue. So let's take our ultramarine and blue mix, put a little bit of brown into it so it's not like a complete dark black. Let's just knock out a few parts here, a few of the darkest parts. Get a little bit of a lighter version of that. This side isn't as dark. So as you can see, I'm just quickly throwing all these colors on, and there is a lot more to it, with a lot more detail. But what I myself like to do is I kind of do two separate block-ins. The second block-in is where we get a little bit more of the detail in here. So I'm just kind of putting the biggest mass of color here to map out different areas first. And add a little blue into the mixture that we already have, a blue and some more white to lighten it up, because things in the background are usually bluer, and there's also less contrast, a little brighter, and that'll bring it back in your painting a lot. Okay, now we've got some kind of whites and blues. Whoa. Whites and blues over here for some snow. This little kind of bank, a little pathway of snow right here. A little bit of snow over here, snow or some gray rocks in between everything. I'm just quickly hinting at those because you can see it in the reflection here. So I just wanted to get some of these reflections while we still have this color. Not exact, but something to semi-show what we're trying to see here. Right, and then many times reflections are darker in the water than they are the real thing. So this is kind of a very dark reflection down here of the mountains above. Okay, guys, and just like that, you have your first blocking. Yeah. Now let's get to blocking number 2. So this is where we put just a little bit of the detail. It's not quite detail yet, but we're mapping out where different shadows and highlights are without putting too much work into it. So that's why it's still considered a block-in to me. There's no detail, but you're finding these spots where you need to put more detail. It's all about finding the values, really. So it's kind of a value study first. So let's get into some of the details here. So look at these mountains, look at your reference photo if you have it, and look where some of the darkest darks are. So we're going to take our umber and ultramarine blue mixture, our near black mixture, with a little bit smaller of a brush. So here it is, kind of a near black. And let's take that and just fill in some of these areas that are a little darker, which will help give some of this a little bit more form. Instead of just a flat color, you're going to begin to see where some of the variations in the land are, where some of the rocks, the holes in the mountains, the cracks in the rocks, that kind of thing. So I'm going to start, unlike usual when I start at the back, I just want to get in some of these kind of variations in the land up in front. So let's take a look at that first. Also, the lone standing tree, it's very skinny, and it's right here. We won't be able to do that until the end once we get all the water and everything done. So I'm waiting to do this tree. So kind of a focal point, the subject of the painting is this tree because it's right in the middle and it's right in the front. We're not going to see that until almost the very end. It's as if this whole painting is going to be done, and then we're going to add the tree. So just remember, a tree is coming, which will make this landscape a lot more interesting. Let's get to this land up here. So just quickly, you can see some shadows in the land wherever the light isn't hitting it. So there's kind of steps down where there's just kind of chunks of land missing going down to the bank of the lake here. So you have, this is kind of an edge there. I'm taking my time a little bit, but not too much. This isn't really exact. I'm just getting the kind of the area because I want to get the block-in phase of this done kind of quickly. I'm not really doing it exact. Just really throwing up some lines and some values here. showing where rocks and things are. Just little hints instead of perfection. Now there's some darks back here on the bank of the river right here. This is all dark. Seems that the light is coming over here from the left, so that's why everything that dips down, not much light is hitting it. So like this bank of the lake right here, this is all a big dip, kind of a cliff into the water. And right here, it gets really dark because none of this is really seen by light too much. Okay, up here this is actually very dark, it's near black, so let's just kind of get another layer up in here. Okay, this mountain over here is a lot more dark in it. So let's take that near black, but let's put a little more umber in it, maybe put a little yellow, something to slightly brighten it up. Because it's not just black, but it is darker. So this whole side right here. And again, whatever you darken up here, you're going to want to do the same thing in the shadow. take a dark and kind of show the horizon line, or at least the line between reflection and real life. Take a little bit of a dark and put it kind of along the edge if there's not darkness there already. I'll make this part a little darker. This is a pretty dark reflection here. It needs to be much darker. Okay, so let's just continue putting darks in wherever you see darks. This might take a little bit for both of us, so let's play a little music, slightly speed this up, and let's see what we can do to get this to start looking a little more real. Alright guys, that is the blocking done. As far as I'm concerned, that's as good as we have to get. Alright, so now we're getting to the actual meat of the painting. So we're going to start at the back and come forward. So we're going to begin with the sky, we'll get to the mountains, and then we'll start getting to the water, and then the tree last. So let's get to the sky. We're doing basically what we did before. You're going to mix pretty much a white, a little bit of blue in there, and then a little more blue to the right where it's not so overcast. Let's get to it. Alright, titanium white with a little bit of blue over here. So if you have a bigger brush, just slightly bigger brush, use that so you can get more coverage faster. Doesn't have to be a huge brush. Obviously, this isn't that big of a brush, but something that makes it a little easier on yourself than a small brush that's just going to take way too long. And also use a lot of paint. If you try to do this all with just a little bit of paint because you're trying to conserve it, because it's expensive, then well, it's just gonna take a lot longer. For a big area like sky like this, you want to get a lot of paint up in there so that it doesn't take a long time. Okay, so there it is, something like that, and then when you get to the right, it gets a lot bluer, so let's mix a bit of blue into that white. Some blue and some teal. It's not a perfect line right here because it's actually like a sheet of clouds. So make sure you have a little bit of difference in there in the clouds before you get to this bluer part here. Also, it might help if you want to blend it a bit. So what I'm going to do is, you can either grab another brush for blending, if you have a kind of a blender brush, or you can take the paint off of this brush and then just blend it with a brush that doesn't have any paint on it anymore. But let me see, I'm going to just take this blender brush and just kind of go along this line here. And there. Now it's not just that perfect line there anymore. It looks a little more like clouds. All right. Okay, and now, since our light source is coming from over here, I'm not going to keep this one kind of whitish blue. Where the light is really coming from over here, the very edge, I'm actually going to take some pure white, like this. I'm going to bring it over here so that we have a bit of a glow coming from this side. So it started with a pure white, and it's taking some of the blue from behind and using that, so it's not a pure white anymore if it wasn't dry underneath, if you're doing this all at once. But it is still a difference. You still can see the difference between this lighter area and then as it blends over to the other side. Again, since I still have paint on this brush, I'm going to take this one that's more like a blender brush like this. I'm gonna blend the edge in there. Make sure you aren't heavy-handed on this part, because you can pierce through the paint and then get some of the canvas coming through too much. So just do it really lightly till it all has a nice blend. And I'm going to do it one more time. And get this pure white, put it just like a little corner up here, maybe like where the sun would be. Not all the way to the bottom, not all the way to the side, just a little bit right there. And blend it in. And the blending job doesn't have to be perfect either, because they're clouds. It actually shouldn't be perfect. You want a little variation in there just to see that it's a cloud and not just pure white background. Okay. If you want to, you can put a little bit of it in down here. I'm actually taking the blender brush, which has a little bit of that on it already from taking it off up there. I'm just putting a little bit in there just to kind of lighten it up on one side where the light source is. Okay, so I will call that about done for the sky. So like I said, we're moving from the back forward. So we're gonna get to the furthest mountains first. So take a look at the reference photo. You can see that the furthest back mountain is this little one in the middle. So this little one in the middle, in order to keep it far back, we want to keep a bluish tint to it. That's atmospheric perspective. Things get bluer at the back and less contrast. So let's just mix something that is a bit of a light blue. So we already have kind of a light blue right here, but I don't want it to be that blue. I want to bring down saturation a little bit by putting a little umber in there. The warmness of the umber will mix with the coolness of the blue and kind of desaturate it a bit so it's not so blue and unrealistic. So there, this isn't too blue now. Let's throw that up there in the background, see what it looks like. Alright, that's pretty good. So what you can do is try to copy a reference photo perfectly if you want to. But if you can't, if you don't have the reference photo, or if it's just too hard to copy it genuinely perfectly, then you use these techniques. these painting techniques which help. So even though it doesn't look that blue in the background of the actual reference photo, if you do these techniques like knowing about atmospheric perspective and how the blue brings it backward, then you don't have to copy the reference photo exactly. You use these techniques that you know. So now you can see from where it just was to now, just putting that bit of blue in there has brought those mountains back a lot. If you take a look at this right now, it looks like they're way back there, very far away, because we put some blue in there. In the photo, you can see that they're actually not that far away, and that's why they're not that blue. But I like them kind of like that. Let's try to put some detail in there now. It's kind of hard to see the detail because the tree, which we don't have on here yet, is actually in front of a lot of this. So it kind of just looks like there's some shrubbery in there, there's maybe some snow. It's hard to see, so we might have to make some of it up. So I'm going to take a long rigger brush like this. Long, pointy rigger brush. This is what I use a lot of times for my detail. But let's mix kind of a darker blue in here, because we're going to make some shrubbery. It needs to be darker. So we'll take this blue, but we need a little bit of yellow, because they're on the green side, but not totally green. So you want a lot more blue than yellow. But we want it darker, so maybe some umber. Okay, let's try this. Basically a dark blue. Dark blue, a little bit of yellow, tweak it to green. So like I said, it's pretty hard to see things in there, but whatever you can see, you can just place it in there or kind of make it up. Okay, so there are just a couple of hints of some angles in the mountains back there. Well, let's get some snow. So the snow, it's not going to be a pure white because it's way back there. It's still going to be pretty blue. So you just want like a lighter shade of what we were just using. So put some white into that mix, the side of the mix that you're just using. And let's hint at some snow here. Say we need to go a little lighter again. Okay. I don't want this to all be blue. There's actually a little bit of light hitting on some of the spots, so let's take some of the, like a brown, a tan, like this. I still have some of that. And let's just hit a couple of the tops of the mountain here. Okay, that snow didn't quite work. I want to lighten up a few of those areas. So you can use the blue that the very light blue that we were just using, put some more light in it so that you know that it's lighter. You want it lighter, but you still don't want it to be a pure white. Let's see how we can do with this. That looks a little more like snow. I think that's fine for the back mountains for now. Doesn't even have a lot of detail. What we can do, if we want, is take some of this blue, what we were doing before, the blue with a little bit of green, but darken it up a bit. I want to hint at some trees. They're winter trees, so no leaves or anything. They're just kind of sticks of trees, just trunks. good. We're done with the first mountain. That wasn't too bad, was it? Didn't take long at all. So now we're getting to the right mountains, or hills, more like hills. Those are the next furthest away, at least the back part of it, the back portion. So we have the colors doing pretty well already. We need to get, let's get some highlights in there. No, let's go for these oranges. So if you still have those oranges, get your dark orange. If you don't have it, let's mix one again. We're basically making a dark orange. So a lot of yellow, a bit of red, and you want some umber to darken it up. It's possible to darken it up too much, which I just did, so I'm going to put some more red in there. Take some of that orange here, and let's look close at the photo. This orange, it's kind of a grass, and some of the areas have more of it than others. They're kind of just groups where this grass is coming in. I'm gonna make it a little more red really quick. Alright. So let's just go in and put in these, I don't know, groups of grasses where they're creeping up the hill. So it actually extends all the way to behind that mountain to the sides. There we go. A lot of this bottom part here, that's all grass. Creeps up the mountain a bit, but at the bottom, it's all grass on that side back there. And it creeps up a little bit every once in a while. While we still have this color, even though we're trying to start at the back here, we still have this color, so I want to get some of it over here. A lot of this over here is actually grass as well. It's orange weed grass, whatever it is. So I'm just going to kind of cover this whole bottom section with it, and then we'll go in and we'll put in some snow, because it's basically a field of grass, but then the snow is what breaks it up over here. So these grasses start coming all around there, but a lot of it we will add at the end. A lot of the smaller grasses are more like details that go on after we finish almost everything else. So those I'm going to leave for later. Okay, there's one technique I really like to use to get in some texture for land, for trees, for actually a lot with landscapes. Whenever there's a lot of little bits of texture and you don't want to take your brush and just dab on every little rock, every little grain of sand, you want to take a texture brush. If you have a texture brush, something like this, it's a hog hair bristly brush, so it's like a very thick, kind of sharp bristle. These are great for landscapes. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to create some texture on here using this. So the place where we want the texture right now is in this mountain, or this hill, in the ground of the hill, the rocks, the pebbles, and all of that. So what we want to do is we're going to grab something similar to it. Well, actually, let's start with the shadows. So let's take our mix, basically our ultramarine and brown mix. If you have any more of it, if you don't, take some of your blue and your brown, mix it together again. And your black is what we're going for. Pretty easy. And then take your texture brush, if you have it. Just dab it on there. And then you're gonna kind of dab this all over where you see that you want some texture in there. So, look at this. Very lightly dab it on the gravel, the rock, this whole area. Look at that. If you gently dab it, it's almost like you can already see the rocks and the gravel on there. And we just started a second ago. So you're basically gonna do this everywhere. Obviously not in the water, we don't need that texture on the water, but all over this, you can put that in. Alright guys, now let's get to the grass in the front here. Yeah, let's get to the grass in the front here. Usually I don't do the front first, but in this case I noticed I had the right colors here on the palette, so I want to at least get a little bit of this in here. So I'm going to take a fan brush like this. It's a textured brush, but laid out in the form of a fan. And that's how it's really good for grasses. So take a look at the palette. I'm using this kind of darker orange here. And let's just lay this on in the front here on some of this grass. So look at this, you kind of dab on these kind of lines of grass. Looks like it's a little too dark, so I'm going to put a little white into it. maybe a little more red to orange it up. But in order for it to stand out, I need it to be a little lighter like this. All right, now let's try. Look at that. When you dab it on right, that's how you get kind of a grass-like texture. So I usually only go side to side to get the right texture up there, but if you get to the edge of the painting and it's not really hitting the edge, you can go vertically just along the edge a little bit, just so you make sure you're getting some of that coverage. Okay, so that's the start of the grass there. We're gonna do a few different layers. We need some different hues there, but let's continue. Let's just get some of this back here, and then we're going to move back to the back again. But while we have this color here, I just want to get this in with the fan brush here, all ready to go. Just like we were doing with that, we're going to take this fan brush again, and we're going to get all these hills in the back here. But what we're going to do is we're basically going to mix the colors that we already had. So we need that kind of orangish, we need this tan here, and we're going over the darkness that we just put on it. So a little bit of it is going to peek through, and that's what gives you the texture. So that's why we have to go back and do a bit of it again. So take a look at the palette. This has dried up, so let's make another kind of a tan brown using a bit of orange, some umber, and some white. We can make a couple different piles here. We're going to be using a lot of these, but also some slightly different variations. Got kind of a whiter tan here, a little bit of a darker one. But what we need in both is a bit more orange. So take some yellow and some red and orange them up just a bit. Here's a pretty good tan mix right here, and then the brown right here. Let's put a little more orange into it again. It's just slightly different, kind of darker variation. let's grab the lighter brown tan here. Let's get it up while we're painting here. You know what? I want to put just a little bit more texture in with the darks, because we don't want it to all get covered up. Sometimes that happens, and then you can't see much of the texture that you put in there. So you can't really overdo it, as long as you can still see some of what's beneath. It's kind of better to overdo it than to underdo it, because with this fan brush here, you can easily end up covering it all of the texture that you just put in. So let's take the fan brush, go in the direction of the land. I'm going to lighten up this tan a bit. Get a little more highlight into there. So this whole side of the mountain is pretty light right here, but see, you can still see some texture in there. That's why we do it this way. We can put a little more in there manually, but at least we have the basis to start with, instead of just a really flat one color there for a gravelly surface. Alright, that's a start for some texture there, but we have a lot more than this one color. So let's get in some of the darks. So we're going to take this dark brown, and let's put a little bit of that in there. So this, well, kind of a medium brown. And throw a little bit of that in there for some texture and some variation of the color in this. Okay, that's about it for the fan brush. Now, let's get some real detail in here using the rigger brush. A fine point, long rigger brush like this. So, I'm going to go back into our shadow mix, ultramarine blue and umber, if you still have it. If you don't, mix a new one. 50-50 of both colors. Now let's start putting some of the detail into these rocks. So, por ejemplo, or for example, right here you have kind of a ledge. And just kind of dab it on. You don't want a straight edge here, because it really isn't straight. It's very rocky, and so some parts are pretty dark, and even though it's kind of an edge right here, it really is not perfect at all. So we need to show that by the variation in where we put these shadows. I'm going to put a little more blue into this mix because the shadows have a blue tint to them. So maybe not a 50-50 mix with the umber. Keep a little more blue in there, a little more coolness. And I'm even going to add just a dash of white so that it's not that dark. And start getting these different kind of cliff walls here. Okay, in the back, right back here, there's some kind of silhouettes of some rocks and things. Okay, we need to keep this slope going all the way down. I'm going to mix a little bit of white into the side here, so it's just kind of a light gray. I want to have a bit of an edge to some of these hills here, so just a tiny bit of a little edge up here. And then along the water line, there's usually some kind of shadow. A little bit of a shadow along here. Make sure you keep it very thin if you can. Very thin along the water line. Okay. Now let's get this blue gray. Let's put a little more white into it. Get kind of a light blue gray. And this light blue gray, there's going to be kind of some highlights here in the sides of the cliff. Okay, I'm going to take a corner of that and get a lighter version of it. And I've got some more little highlights in there. Okay, I want to get some snow into here, so let's mix a white and some of the snow is going to be white with a little bit of maybe an orange hue. So put a little, just a touch of orange in there. So we'll start with the snow that goes kind of up the hill here. Okay, now using the same brush, the same technique, let's try to get some snow in here. So we have kind of a little cliff face right here, and the snow is going into a little nook right there, which is pretty hard to see at the moment, but as everything starts to take form, you'll be able to see it more. Alright, now let's get a little snow into these crosses right here. So once again, rigger brush, flatten it out on the palette if you can, just by hitting two sides of it. Instead of circle, you want to hit a side and then hit the other side to get it real flat and thin, so you can get these nice lines in here for the snow. Okay. Now I want to lighten up. I want some highlights on some of these rocks here where the light is really hitting it. So let's go back to our browns over here, like this. But then let's take some white into a portion of it and really lighten up some of it for some highlights. So, like this rock face right here, that needs to be highlighted a bit more. Highlight. Okay, and just do that same thing on these rocks wherever it should be highlighted a bit more, wherever the sun will really be hitting it. So like one side of this little strip right here, the side toward the edge. Because the side that's not toward the edge on the inside, there's a shadow there. So it's not going to be as bright. And of course, some of this down here, some rocks that are, the light is hitting a bit more. Make sure you put in some of these bigger rocks around here. There's just kind of a big pile of big rocks all in this area. Edge of this one as well. Kind of have a highlighted ridge at the top of this where the sun is really hitting. And we can go all the way to the bottom, wherever these highlights go, all the way to the water here. Then you can add them just sporadic highlighted rocks all along here. And if you're doing rocks instead of these little lines, then you don't have to flatten your brush. Actually, don't flatten it if you're getting these rocks like this, because you want them to be more rounded. So now I want to try the same technique we were using with a different brush. Look at this brush. See how it has some bristles up here. This is made for grasses, things like that. But you can use it when you want to make more than one tiny little brush. So using this to get some extra rocks in here, I'm going to put it in this highlight brown that we've been using here. But instead of getting just one little dot at a time, this will get 4 or 5. Let's see how it works. We can kind of go upward with the current. Look at that, a bunch of misshapen little rocks, little pebbles everywhere. See how if you don't just barely tap, then it kind of turns into a line, which is why it's great for grasses, because it turns into just a little bitty kind of grass looking line. So it's not the best for gravel, but if it's far away you won't be able to tell, and so it works. I'm going to use the same brush, but I want a dark now, just for a little bit more texture in there. I'm going to go to the ultramarine and blue mixture. Let's just do the same technique, but I just want to get a little more, some darks in there. It works pretty well, but it's not perfect, so sometimes it's a good place to start, but then after you have to kind of fix it up a little bit because they're not the perfect shape for rubble. It does get in some nice texture though, pretty quickly. Alright, we need to get some of those orange grasses back in, so let's mix an orange into this brown. I want to have more color in this thing, so get a lot of that red, a lot of that yellow. Even if it seems like it's more texture than you have in the reference, or no, more color, more saturated than your reference photo, that's all right sometimes because it's kind of in the base layer, and as you keep working on it, you'll be covering a lot of that color, but some of it will show through. Some of it will shine through, which will get more color into your painting without it really taking over. So we're just gonna dab that on wherever you think a group of those grasses should be. I might even put a little white in there. I want it to show up a bit more. And the same with the side over here. I want some of these grasses to pop out a bit more. So yeah, let's add some more of this orange in here. Okay, one more round with the snow white, which, as you remember, the white, we put a tiny bit of orange in there just so it's not a pure white. We want to save our pure white for the real highlights sparingly. Hey guys, I'm going to play a little music and speed this up a bit so that you don't have to watch this whole thing, and then we'll get to the next mountain. Alright guys, finally I think we are done with that hill, mountain, whatever you call it. And let's get to the mountain to the side of it. This one shouldn't take that long. The grass in front shouldn't take that long, and then we'll get to the water. So it seems like we're far away because we've only done a couple parts of the painting, but I think we're getting there. Coffee helps. Coffee helps a lot. Look at this one. Yeah, it's really odd coffee at the corner store, but look at that art on it. I love it. Not bad. All right, back to it. So, get kind of a middle-sized brush like this, kind of a pointy middle-size, doesn't matter too much. Let's get to some details in this. Let's mount into the left side now. So I'm going to get some darks in here. I'm going to get this blue, which is a mixture of ultramarine blue and umber and a bit of white. Just kind of desaturate the blue, but keep it kind of dark. And this is kind of a little bank of snow, and a lot of it has this dark blue kind of in the background of the shadows. So we'll start with this blue, and then we're gonna have to put the snow kind of over it. But underneath, it's pretty much a lot of this kind of blue, shadowy gravel. And you can use basically the same blue for a lot of these spots over here where there's some exposed rock. So up here there's some exposed rock, but this is all in the shadow, which is why it's pretty much blue in the shadow. We'll add a little bit of kind of a highlight blue soon, but for now it's mostly just this blue. Alright, I'm going to get my thinner rigger brush now, this one, and I'm going to grab more of that blue. I just want to get to some smaller, pointier details where this brush is going to work better. So this is kind of a bunch of snow is just falling down this little slope right here. So this all will mostly be snow and this shadowy gravel there. And next to the slope, this is kind of like a cliff right here. A little straight down vertical slope against it on the side. So all of this, we can kind of draw it in. It's like this whole area right here under this line slopes directly down. The slope goes down the mountain this way, and this is a cliff that goes directly down the slope, if you can see what I'm talking about. So you'll have some lines going pretty much straight vertically to show that difference. And then we'll continue over here to a couple other little slopes. So you have this is one right here. And it's kind of hard to tell occasionally. This is maybe a little bit of a bank, a snow bank here. And now I'll go straight down right there. And then this is kind of covered in grasses and things. But the grasses are on the flat plains, and then between the grasses there are these sheets of rock going straight down again. Just several little straight down. You can just mark it kind of in, just like we were doing before, little vertical strokes downward. There are a lot of these little rock faces all around here, and then you have some rubble and things over here just kind of going to the side. Yeah, we're refining some of the edges here because during our blocking we didn't get the perfect edges of the ends of the mountains and everything, so we'll be adding those in as we put in the texture and everything, adding a little more shape to these mountains. Okay, that is a good start. Let's get some of the shadows in here. So if you still have it, use your ultramarine and umber mixture, maybe on the ultramarine blue side, a little bit of more of a hint of blue. So not a 50-50, maybe a 60-40 blue to umber ratio. Flatten your brush on there. Let's get some of these shadows in here between the highlights. So these grasses and rocks, wherever it's between these kind of little cliffs, it's pretty dark and hard to tell what's going on. But all you have to know is make it a little dark wherever it's in between these gray cliffs here. let's add some snow on this side of the painting. So on the last side, the snow had an orange tint to it because a lot of light was hitting it. On this side, the snow is kind of in the shadow, and this snow is going to have a blue tint because it's in the shadow. So it's still going to be mostly white. So let's take some white over here, but then we want a little hint of blue, so just put some blue in there. Doesn't have to be a lot. Shouldn't be a lot. You want it to be mostly white. It's still got to be lighter than the rest of it since it's snow. So let's take this white and let's build some snow here. So the snow, it kind of looks like a bunch of little strips. So that's why you flatten this rigger brush so that you can get kind of thin stripes, and every once in a while it's going to be a patch of snow. So you'll flatten it out on the canvas. But a lot of it, you're just going to take a little piece and just kind of dab on a little clump of snow. Slowly bring the snow all the way up this little snowy walkway. Another little bank of snow right here. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and that's the beauty of it. It's almost like the more imperfect your snow is, the faster you put it on, the better and more real it tends to look. Remember to stand back every once in a while and look at your work. It can change it a lot when you stand back compared to being real close up. Alright. It's looking pretty good from far back. We still need to add a little bit of snow up in here, just sitting on some of these rocks. And down here, this is actually all kind of grass at the bottom. The mountain doesn't go all the way to the water, so we have to kind of show that somehow. So, I want to take some of our orange for our grasses, our grass orange, and see if we can just dab it on along the bottom. Okay, definitely some grasses there at the bottom now. So now we're going to do some more snow. And the snow should give everything some gravity, so we kind of know what's going on down here. Okay, now I need some highlights in these rocks here. So not as light as the snow, but we do need some highlights. So let's get a highlight of this kind of darker gray-blue, which we already have here. I'm going to bring in some white inside of that. Okay. So now we have a rock highlight. Just kind of dab it on at the top here. This is just some kind of highlights on some rubble. And just delicately hitting here. And this is creating a textured rubble kind of effect. So you can kind of hit it to make some texture, but every once in a while flatten it out and make a kind of a bigger looking rock. You don't want it to all be the same texture there. Alright, we're getting pretty close here. What we need now is a little bit more of our shadows, so that, like I've said 1,000 times, some ultramarine blue and some burnt umber, and we're going to fill in some of the cracks in these rocks and some other areas where we need some darks in between the snow and things. This is going to bring everything out. So get that mix, slightly more blue. Flatten out your brush. And if you can, barely touch. You want a real thin line if you can get it. We are almost done with this mountain. The last part, I believe, is going to be a little bit of snow, a little bit more snow on there. So get highlight snow. So we need some more white. You're gonna want some blue in there, but not much. We want this to really highlight everything and get this to really stand out here. So let's find these little mounds of snow all over here and just add a bit. Make sure to get the snow at the side of this little walkway here. A lot of it kind of turns into little mounds against the wall here. And then at the top of the wall, you have some snow. And if you do it in the right way, the right direction, then that'll really show you that it's a cliff. Little piles of snow on the top. One more bit of snow at the base here. It's in the shade, so a little bit of a blue tint to all this snow that's just in the shade at the bottom here. The last part right here before we get to the grass ahead is along the banks of the lake. These are actually a bunch of rocks, so let's hint really quick at some rocks right at the edge. Okay, that is it. Now we're moving on to these grasses, which we've already gotten generally in the area that they're going to. So we're just going to get some more highlights in these grasses and the shadows to show the lumps and the variation in the landscape. It shouldn't take too long. So let's go in first. I think we'll go with the shadows first. And they're pretty dark. So get your near black mix. Make sure that it is still near black. You don't need a bluish tint or a brownish tint. Just get it pretty dark. Pretty dark in the middle. Okay, so the darkest bit of this is the bank. It's kind of a little drop off on the edge of the grass. So we're gonna darken that up along the water here. Okay, so that's the main part, is the edge there. And now let's show some of the variation in the actual hill here. So, for example, right here, this is almost a totally different hill behind here. So it gets a little darker. Just lightly brush on a little bit of darkness there behind. And just a couple little humps, little mounds in there. Okay. And while we're here, let's get this one right here in the foreground. Same thing. So this should really sit on top and give us some good highlights. So you know, it's lighter than the rest, but it's still not too light, so I'm gonna add some more yellow and some more white. Let's really try to lighten up these highlights. Okay, let's give it another go. Alright, that's adding a bit more than we had before. So that is good. So along the top edges of the shadows, that's where you see a lot of the real highlights. And do the same back here. Even on the shadows where it's really dark, should maybe put in just a little bit of texture. You don't want it to be a plain black for the most part. And if we want it to be a plain black, then we can put that in after. But we don't want this all to be that way. So give it a little bit of texture all over. Okay, now we want some real highlights, so let's get some more white, put it into that mix, some more yellow. Let's just get the parts that we need, just a little bit of oomph. So, like the top edge of this back one, kind of glowing in the sun. So that is good enough for the fan brush. So we have basically the layout of what we need. Now we just need to take some highlights and some darks in there, but we gotta do it manually since we don't have a lot of control over the fan brush with a painting of this size. It's just too big. So let's get our darks again. And let's kind of manually put them in where we need the darks in this painting. So kind of where you see them already, but maybe they got a little muddied because of the fan brush. So just put in some edges again. set the camera. Oops. Alright, so make sure to refine these edges here, where the fan brush just couldn't do a good job of that. I don't know why. Fan brush is so much trouble sometimes. Just a pain. Yeah. Okay. We are getting there. Alright, once again, one of my favorite parts is the snow, because it really grounds everything. Gravity brings snow down, and so you can tell kind of the terrain of the landscape through wherever the snow is. This snow is in the light. So this snow isn't going to have a blue hue. If anything, it'll have the orange hue again. So let's take a bit of orange into the white. And let's add some snow to this background. right, so take a look at the palette and let's mix a kind of a gray blue. So I'm going to take some of these things we already have here. So a mix of umber, blue, a bit of white. Want some more blue in there. Okay. So I think that is probably going to work, kind of a washed out bluey brown. So I'm going to take my fine point rigger brush, stick it in there, and let's just quickly draw in some of these rocks. There are a lot of them, so you're not going to want to try to do it exactly like it is in the photo. Just kind of make it up as you go. So you can see them the most around here. So something like that. I think it's not washed out enough, so I'm going to put some white in there. We don't want it to be too dark. If it's too dark, it's going to look like it's sitting on top of the water. So we need, I think even lighter than that. All right, yeah. I think that is probably going to work for our purposes here. So you're not gonna try to make perfectly shaped and sized rocks here because there are so many of them. So just start putting them in here. Just kind of dab on these little circles. You can look at the reference photo if you want to, or you can kind of just make it up as you go along. And you'll see that water distorts rocks, so as you get further away and your viewpoint isn't right over the rocks but further away, like back here, rocks get stretched out and they start looking more stretched out, like I just said. Let's stick with that. So there are a lot of rocks, but also there are spaces between the rocks where it's just kind of gravel or sand, so you don't want them to be everywhere, and you want kind of different sizes of them, but nothing too large. Nothing in here really looks that big. They're smaller rocks, most of them. Okay, let me speed this up a little bit and play you guys some music. Okay, I basically got in those rocks, got in a little bit of the sand texture that you can kind of see down there, and now we're actually going to paint in the rocks. So you want an orange, like the rocks are, an orange, kind of brown, but obviously, just like we were doing already, you need to kind of white it out, desaturate it, so that it looks like it's under the water. You don't want it to stand out too much or it'll be on top of the water. It'll look like that. So make an orange, but then bring it down, bring it a lot down with the white, like I have right here. And then start filling in these rocks. Usually the shadows are on the right and bottom side, so you can see wherever you put those shadows, you put this orange to the top left, the opposite side where the shadow, the opposite side of the shadow. Really can't talk today. And this process doesn't have to take you that long. You can kind of quickly put these in. I don't like to spend a lot of time with this. Everything's under the water, so you just kind of throw these colors around. Make sure you have some kind of variation too, like have some that are a little more orange, some that are a little more red, some that are a little darker. You don't want it to all be exactly the same. That won't look right. And then even a variance within each one. It shouldn't just be one flat color. You can, since there are so many of them, but every once in a while, when you have a rock that you want to be more of a focal point, then you can put more effort into it. That red that I'm using right now, it might be a bit too much, so I'm gonna lighten it up, take out some of the color, put a lot more white into it. Now we have a lighter hue. It's not really red anymore, but yeah, you want some of these kind of lighter ones, darker ones, like you do with anything. You need a little variation in there for sure. And in different spots, there's more or less light coming. So, like let's say this spot right around here, a lot more light is hitting. Whereas over here to the right, less light is hitting. So I won't use these lighter values over there. It's a bit darker. Now I'm mixing one that has a little more blue mixture in it. So, just like I was just saying, just as much variation as you can get without spending a ton of time. Okay, see how quickly we basically got the look. It already looks like what it's supposed to be. Now we just have to get in the details to really make sure that it looks right. Like every once in a while, make sure you have a focal rock, one rock where you put more detail into it that draws the eye, so that you don't have to put detail into all the rocks, but just into a few of them, so that people's eyes get attracted to a few of the rocks and they don't look at each individual rock that doesn't have the detail to it. So I'm going to get our grayish bluish shadow again and kind of outline a few of these a bit more. I'm actually going to try making it a little darker, so use a little bit of the umber that I have left, a little bit of the ultramarine, and try to make a few darker shadows in there. Hopefully it doesn't bring it too far out of the water. That's pretty dark. It might work, but I want to lighten it up just a little bit. Now these rocks kind of continue into the shadow over here. So we're going to do the same thing. It's just going to be a little bit darker of a version, a little bit darker version there. So we can use basically the same kind of colors, but we're going to use a darker, dark, and then more color, so more orange in there. where it was a very light orange before, now it'll be darker, more saturation. Don't forget, we still have a tree to put in here. That tree, it won't take that long. It's just branches, really, without leaves. I don't think there are any leaves. Okay, so now we have our orange here. I do want to take a part of it, put some umber in there, just to darken it up. Okay. All right, let's start with this kind of darker orange first. And now, because we're not standing right over the water, like here, our viewpoint is right over the water, and so the rocks aren't distorted that much. But when you get over to the side here, further away, we're not looking on top, we're looking further out that way. And that means that the rocks are a little more distorted. They're a little, they're stretched out. So take a look at this. Let's do some quick stretched out rocks here. So some of them are still going to be just pebbles, really, but some of these are a little more stretched. You can try to get that in there. Just show that as much as you can. Okay. Now that is a start, but we want a darker version of this. So I put some blue in there, and let's see what we can get with this. What does this look like? Okay, that works. It's kind of a small space, so we'll probably have to go back in there. It's fine to make this mostly orange. This spot should be mostly orange anyway, up to a certain point. But up at the front here, it's very orange. And so we want more orange in there, and then we'll go back in with the darks to just kind of clean it up a little bit. So ultramarine blue, umber, get your close to black. Now let's clean it up with some little edges here. It's a very small area, so just do what you can. depending on the size of your painting. For me, this is pretty small. And it gets really dark to the far left, so you can take out some of those oranges and just leave some of them. Okay. Obviously we could do more there, but from where I'm standing, that actually looks pretty good. That only took a few minutes, and it actually looks like there are some rocks under there, so that is pretty good. Okay, we are almost done here. What I want to do next is I want to brighten up this water a little bit over here, because the sky is almost pure white over here. So I want to make this almost pure white just on this little side here. It's going to really make things stand out. So get your pure white or close to it. Because it's in the water, it doesn't have to be pure white. You can put in a little blue just to make it slightly darker than the air. But not much, because this is already very light. But we want it to be lighter than that. See. So let's just give this a try. Hopefully that's lighter. Acrylics actually dry darker. So sometimes it looks like it's a lot lighter, and then when you look at it later, it's not anymore. But I think this is enough of a difference. It should stay lighter. Okay, there we go. Now I just want to try to blend it in a bit. See, sometimes it's nice to use two brushes. You have one with paint on it, the other that doesn't have paint on it. You can kind of, use to just brush it through and blend things up. Doesn't really matter what kind of brush it is, but I like to use any brush that's really soft edges. So this particular one is a fan brush, which I don't usually do, but it just seemed really soft, so I was into it today. That's actually the first time I've tried blending with that. Okay, here is my next favorite part. We're going to do the ripples in the water. This is what really makes it look like water. So for right there, you're going to take the color of the area that you're going to. Like let's say right now we're going here, so it's basically a white, and we're gonna put some ripples in there. So you take your fine point brush and you just put some Okay, so let's continue putting these ripples in. Again, I'm gonna put some music on for you. Okay guys, I think we are almost there. There are more details that we can put on here for sure, definitely. We could spend another hour or so on the details, but I think it's pretty good as it is. We need to get to the tree, so let's just finish it off with the subject of this whole thing with the tree, and we will be all good to go. So let's get to this tree, which is in the foreground. It is the subject of the painting. It's right in the front here. So we're gonna take, you guessed it, our near black to start it off. So if you don't have it, mix your ultramarine and your umber. And again, we're gonna use our fine point rigger brush. That is the best to get these fine twigs and things, branches on the tree. Really have to concentrate on this part. We don't want to mess up the whole painting underneath with this. So make sure you have the right brush and you go slow enough to make sure this doesn't get messed up. As always, flatten it on both sides. And let's do this. It's a little scary. Okay, so this tree isn't dead center, it's a little to the left. So it begins right at the end of this land here. So let's just go almost straight up. It's Straight up at first, and then it goes over to the side a little bit. Okay. And then continue up. All right, and then let's thicken this up just a little bit. Okay, that's about right. Let's get a branch coming off the side over here. Okay. Ooh, this is stressful. You can barely touch it. Barely touch the canvas if you want the really nice thin ones. Just barely hit it. Okay. Alright guys, talking during this is not helping me, so I'm going to play some music, but you know what to do. So just continue with these branches as you see them in the reference photo, or as you see me do them, or just kind of make them up on your own, but make sure you're very delicate and you don't want to blotch it over the background painting. So let's continue with this. Play some really calming music and make sure you get it going. Alright, I hope you guys made it through that part. I hope you guys didn't blotch the paint at all and you kept it very thin. I hope you got through that. I managed to get through it myself. But now, because the tree isn't just a silhouette, let's put a little texture into it, some midtones and some highlights, and we will be done with this painting. So, to start, we're going to get kind of a near a white, or let's make it a white with some orange in it, or some tan. Kind of like a highlight on this tree, so the bark color, so kind of a brown, kind of an orange. And again, remember your light source. Remember where that light is coming from. So we're going to put it here to the left. And if you can put it on in little strips showing the bark. But if not, if it's too small and you just want to get just a plain strip of highlight on the left side, you can do that too. And then we put the bark texture in after. Whatever is going to work best for you. So for me, on the skinnier parts where I can't really get the bark texture, I'm just gonna just try to get the highlight on there, which in itself is a little difficult to keep it. If you can, keep it to the left on something that's already extremely skinny. It's pretty difficult. Pretty difficult, but someone's gotta do it. So try as hard as you can. And it's alright if you hit the sky a little bit, it should still work. Should be fine. Just make sure whatever you do that it still looks skinny. You don't want these big branches here. You want to keep these cool skinny ones. As much as you can. You can put some yellow into it to make it look a little more like it's glowing. Some orange if you have an orange. You can kill two birds with one stone by, if you have any areas that are a little thicker than you wanted, like I do right here, you take that highlight and you put it into the thickness, and it makes it look a little skinnier again because the highlight doesn't show up as dark. So it kind of goes bye-bye a little bit. did it. There are the highlights there, but we need a little more texture in this tree. So, looks like there's some moss on it, and other little fungi or something on there. So we need kind of an off-white, maybe a bluish tone of a white. So let's take that, a bluish white, and let's put some extra little fungi and things on here. Okay, so we don't need much. Let's get our dark again. Actually, I want to mix a little bit of white in there. I don't want it totally dark. Maybe kind of like a brown or like a gray. Maybe some blue mixed in there. Get some of this bark in here. Okay, and then even up here, don't want this to be all black. Be a little more realistic. If you have some browns in there, not just a bunch of black, because it is not a silhouette. That works for a silhouette, but not for this. All right, lastly, I want to put a few darks back into this because we took a little too many out. It's all about layering. So this is going to be the last thing, I believe. Okay guys, that's it. Make sure you watch this video. It's really cool and it'll help you paint better.